So to Karl Marx, the big evil was the capitalist, the one who owns the tools of production. So if we can get rid of the capitalist, we'll solve society's problems. So his plan was for the government to confiscate all the tools of production, basically all private property. No such thing as property rights. The government will confiscate all that and then kindly and lovingly employ all people. Big time, egalitarian. The biggest command economist of all time, planned economy. And in the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx, is that line, that quote I just used, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. All right, that is a communist idea. If you got that one wrong on the quiz, I can say without hesitation, shame on you. All right, that is, that discourages me if that's the case, because you are the cream of the crop. You are seniors in a private school with a quality education who've gone through with a outstanding curriculum. If you can fall for that, think that that was our founding fathers in the Constitution, then it is no wonder why most of your generation is excited about Bernie Sanders or feeling the burn or whatever you want to say. Any questions on Karl Marx? We'll talk more about communism when we get to that. All right. Got some news, some exciting news. Been anxious to share this with you. I have come across some money, so unexpected. I'm not going to tell you how much, just quite a sum of money. And you know what, I've never been that motivated by money. I'm not sure what to do with it all. So you guys being my economics students, hope you don't mind. Took it upon myself, took the liberty, went on to RenWeb and stuff and looked up your information, and I went ahead and deposited $1 million in a bank account in your name.
Well, I think.
Hope you don't mind. Did any other teachers give you $1 million?
No.
All right. Now, just so you are clear, there are some issues, there's some clerical issues. You cannot withdraw that money. You can't spend it, you can't borrow against it, but it's yours. You have $1 million in an account with your name on it. How does it feel to be rich?
It's not mine.
What if you can't use it?
Well, I know, but you have $1 million.
It's
I
not
know you
mine.
guys are picky. Man, I give you $1 million and now you're all
Feels pretty
upset.
good.
I don't have $1 million.
Not yours, you can't spend it.
I have $1 million, I can show it off my bank account and use it to get good bank loans.
No, I just said you can't borrow off of it.
No, it won't be a borrow, it'll be, I have $1 million, so I'll be able
That's
to.
called
pay.
borrowing off of it.
Mm-hmm.
That means you're using that as your collateral. You can't do that.
So it's
Some
not ours.
stipulations.
Okay, I can flex it and be like I'm rich.
We're gonna.
No, I think you guys get it, right? What's the point, right?
Yeah.
So that proves something, that there is no utility in money itself. Money itself has no utility. You can't eat it, right? You can't do anything with it unless you can spend it, right? To buy things that do have utility. Well, what you instantly understood is something that people in Europe didn't understand for centuries. In the 1500s through the 1700s, their economic system was called mercantilism, and basically that's what they thought wealth was, to stockpile wealth. Now, in those days, in their terms, that meant gold or whatever, precious metals, wherever they keep it, like in the basement of their castle or whatever the European country was. And they thought that the country that would stockpile the most gold was the wealthiest country. They went to such great lengths to stockpile gold. Think about the beginning of our country. We were part of England, and England was practicing mercantilism, and they colonized all over the world, including over here in the New World. And the reason England did that is so they could get gold or whatever the other resources were to make England that's why we broke free from them. We thought, well, no, we don't exist to make you rich. That's not part of the plan, right? We wanted our freedom. But to them, it made perfect sense. King George III, that's the only reason he would have a colony. It got so crazy where European countries, when they were always at war with each other, fighting over stockpiles of wealth or gold. But it got crazy when they started trading with each other. Maybe one country would grow a bunch of food, farmers' crops, trade it to another country for the gold, and then laugh. We got all their gold, all they got was a bunch of food. And then they'd bury the gold, put the gold in the basement of their castle, and all the people in their country, all the peasants were starving to death, but they thought they were a wealthy country because they had a big pile of gold. Right? That's ridiculous, right? There's no utility in money unless you can spend it. So that was called mercantilism, which leads us to another personality we need to talk about. Spend some time talking about Karl Marx, father of communism, the ultimate command economist. Well, on the other side of the spectrum is a man named Adam Smith, a libertarian. Definition of freedom. The ultimate market economist. He lived in, I think, Scotland during those days of mercantilism, and he looked at that, and just like you guys did when I told you you had money but couldn't spend it, Adam Smith just shook his head and said, what in the world are we doing? Piling up gold is not wealth. Alright, so he decided to write a book. And boy, did he ever shake things up when he wrote this book. The title of his book was called Wealth of Nations. And basically what his book spelled out was he was telling European people in general, European leaders specifically, you want to see a wealthy nation? I'll show you how to do that. But it has nothing to do with stockpiling wealth. And it was all based on a saying, a laissez-faire, which is Latin, that means let alone. In other words, government, get out of the way. Leave us alone. That was Adam Smith's way of saying, let the market work. We don't need government influence or involvement in the economy. Just get out of the way and laissez-faire. Let the market work. Give people freedom to figure out how to meet the needs and wants of others. And then keep the fruits of their labor. Alright, so when someone pays them for making their life better, let the person who did that keep that money. And it says, and then stand back and watch. You will see wealth like you have never seen before. He called it the invisible hand. Adam Smith is famous for the invisible hand. Here's what the invisible hand meant. It's simply the profit motive. What motivates us to figure out ways to make other people's lives better? Because there's something in it for us, right? So, newsflash, right? Here you go. As much as I love you guys, and as much as I enjoy my job, I didn't get out of bed when that alarm clock went off today just because of that. What am I expecting? Yeah, I get my paycheck, right? There's gotta be something in it for me. Now, I am meeting the needs and wants of others. I'm meeting your need. It might not be your want, but you need to know this. I'm meeting your needs and wants. Your parents are paying me to do that. And that's one of the reasons why I did it. Gotta be something in it for me, right? So you can imagine in Adam Smith's day, Europeans thought, this man is crazy. He is outside his mind. Can you hear what he is saying? He is going to create a greedy, selfish, antisocial society. What he's promoting is everybody do things for their own good. That's selfishness. Why would anybody support Adam Smith's ideas? And Adam Smith is kind of like facepalm. You can call it selfish if you want to, but under his system of that invisible hand, the profit motive, what is the only way for you to prosper?
Work.
No, stop saying that. This is
Meet your
not
own
kindergarten.
needs.
How?
Satisfy
own
the
needs.
needs and wants of others.
Meet the needs and wants of others. In other words, make someone's life better. Figure out a way to use your talents to make somebody's life better. That's what Adam Smith said. You call that selfish? Go ahead, call it selfish. Call it greedy. But people will be falling all over themselves to figure out how to make someone else's life better. But why will they do that? Just out of their love for fellow man?
No.
No,
For the-
out of the profit motive, which he calls the invisible hand. You call it selfish if you want, but guess what's happening? People's needs and wants are getting met. All right, so let's contrast and compare these two, Karl Marx and Adam Smith. Karl Marx says, everybody, from each according to his ability, everybody should work as hard as they can. Why? Just out of their love for their fellow man. And then to each according to his ability. So then everybody only take what they need, not according to ability. To each according to their need. So then everybody just takes according to what they need. So again, Karl Marx he expects you to work your tail off, but not for your own good, because you love other people. Man, I like that message. That's warm and fuzzy. That sounds good to me. I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. I'll take care of you, you take care of me. We're just all one big happy society. Takes a village, all that good stuff. That's Karl Marx's idea, and that's why that idea will always have appeal. Because it sounds so good. There's one problem. It doesn't work. It never works. Because remember, what was the lie that he based his whole idea on?
There is no God.
There is no God. The problem with his system is there is a God, and we're not him. We have a sin nature. We are by nature selfish, right? Of course we have a sin nature. If we didn't have sin nature, we wouldn't need a savior. Savior from what? Right, so we're selfish by nature. So while it might work for a little while, in the long run, I'm not going to work as hard as I can, just out of my love for you. And as much high opinion as you might have of yourself, neither will you. That's just not how we are. I'd be nice if we did. That'd be nice. Karl Marx had this idea of utopia, where everybody would work hard just for the benefit of others. But since he based it on a lie rather than the truth that there's a God and we're accountable to him and we have a sin nature, it's not going to work. Now, Adam Smith's idea doesn't sound so warm and fuzzy. You work hard so that you can personally prosper. But in order to prosper, the only way anyone's ever going to pay you for anything is if you figure out a way to meet their needs and wants. So on Karl Marx's idea, nobody's needs and wants are getting met because we're all selfish. Nobody is going to work as hard as they can. Under Adam Smith's idea, everybody will work as hard as they can. You can call that selfish if you want, but people's needs and wants will be met. Calls that the invisible hand. Any questions on Adam Smith or Karl Marx? Nope. All right, where we're going with this is we're going to start building a continuum. So, this is a spectrum of ideas about economic systems. On one side, we're gonna have a command economy, that's planned economy. All right, that means big government, right? On the other side, we're We're gonna have a market economy, free market, let the market work. That means limited government. On this side, you have the ideas of Karl Marx versus the ideas of Adam Smith. Right, we would call this egalitarian views of fairness. Everybody has a right to part of it just because they're human. This side, libertarian ideas of fairness. If you want something, earn it. Figure out a way to meet somebody's needs or wants. Right, and where we're going with this is this side is socialism, and this side's what? Capitalism. Again, to put it in a context that we can relate to in present day America, when it comes to political parties, which side leans left? Democrats. So we might as well put that up here. And Republicans lean right. Now that doesn't mean all Democrats believe in Karl Marx. That's not what we're saying. Saying that's, they lean toward bigger government. They lean toward a government planning, commanding the economy, more than just letting the market work. Tell the Democrats to let the market work, they'll gasp. They say that that's too greedy. The same critiques that Adam Smith got in the 1700s when he wrote his book about the wealth of nations. But that invisible hand makes sure that you can't be greedy. Whatever you want to be when you grow up. You don't get just to do what you want to do. That's not what freedom means. What if you want to paint pictures and you're a lousy artist? Can you force anyone to buy your pictures? No. And we have a word for that when we talk about economics. We call it the starving artist. All right? Just because you want to do that doesn't mean anyone has to pay for that. All right? If you're a talented enough artist where people want to pay for your art, your music, your writing, your labor, your ideas, your entrepreneurship, your product, whatever it is, you figure out a way somebody wants to pay for that, well, then you get deep. Right? That's meeting the needs and wants of others. That's making other people's lives better. All right, so open up your textbooks to page 111. 111. Actually, let's go to page 110. Page 110. When we look around the world, different economic systems, think about our economic system here in America. How do we know whether it's more socialistic or capitalistic? Well, there are two questions that have to be answered. Who owns the factors of production? The land, labor, capital. Who owns it? If the answer is there's more government ownership and less private citizen ownership, then which way would it be? Be toward the left, right? If there's more private citizen ownership and less government ownership, then it would be more toward the right. All right? The second question you have to answer is who makes the decisions? Who answers those three economic questions? The output question, input question, distribution question. We just went through those. If there's more government answers to those questions, well then of course it's more toward the socialistic side. If there's less government, put it that way, less government decision making, then it'll be more toward the capitalistic side. Now, what we have up here on the board, compared to page 111 in your textbook, and there is economic spectrum. You know what a spectrum means, right? There's not just two sides. Colors change gradually. Right, so the farther left you go, the more red it gets, the farther right you go, the more blue or whatever that is it gets. Alright, but there's different shades in between. So we're not saying there's two economic systems, socialism and capitalism, not at all. They've outlined 6 right there on that spectrum. Going from left to right, communism, centralized socialism, social democracy, state capitalism, classic liberal capitalism, radical capitalism. There's 6 right there. Guess what we're not saying? We're also not saying there are only 6 economic systems. There's only 6 listed there, but there's an infinite number of points on that spectrum. So a particular economy could be somewhere between 2 of those on that spectrum. There's an infinite number of points on there. Everybody understand that? That's what I mean by spectrum. How do we determine where an economy would be? Like name a country, how do we determine where that would go on the spectrum? Well, you have to answer those 2 questions. Who owns the factors of production? Who answers the 3 economic questions? Based on the answers to those questions, you can figure out where it goes. Again, if there's more government, it's toward the left. If there's less government, it's toward the right. So we're gonna outline one by one those 6 economic systems. We won't get finished today. Finish them tomorrow, what we don't get done today. You ready to go? Ready to do it? We're gonna start on the far right. So where we start?
Radical capitalism.
Radical capitalism. This one's a little weird, since it's all the way to the extreme right, the very far end of the spectrum of economic systems, theories. What if we would take that to the extreme? Who owns the factors of production? Well, how about if private citizens owned everything? The government owned nothing. What if the private decision, or all the decisions were made by private citizens? Government made 0 decisions. Well, first of all, if there's no government, basically what we're saying is there's no government. Government doesn't own anything or decide anything because private citizens own all and decide all. Well, does such a place exist? No. There are no examples of that. But these are economic theories. So if we would take it to the extreme, forget government, we're just gonna let people own all and decide all, well, the problem with that is it's unbiblical. You'll learn in government class later this year that government was God's idea. It's not like man got here and said, we need to organize and make a government. It was God's idea. He knows that it's for our own good. We need authority to guide our behavior. All right, left without restraints, we would all self-destruct, all right, because of our sin nature. So it's God's idea, it's unbiblical. Besides that, it's totally impractical. It would result in chaos. It's anarchy, right? Now usually that's just a completely ridiculous idea. Flip on the news. That's what Antifa is. They're anarchists. Normally that would be a ridiculous idea. Your generation thinks it's a swell idea. Defund the police. Attack the system. obviously radical capitalism is not practiced anywhere. Can't even give an example. But if we're gonna take these theories and go to the far extreme of libertarianism, well, that's what we have. Not a good idea, right? So let's move to the next one. Still way far on the right side, but the first practical type of economic system, what would that be?
Classic liberal capitalism.
Then we're gonna get to what we call classic capitalism. Your book says classic liberal capitalism. Don't be thrown off with the term liberal. Sometimes we use liberal to mean toward the left, right? When it comes to politics and economics. In this usage, the word liberal just comes from the root word liberty. In other words, freedom. Alright, so classic capitalism. Liberal as in limited government, maximum freedom. So, who owns the factors of production? Well, there is a government, right? There has to be a government. Everybody knows that. That's God's idea. But it's a very limited government. Alright, so most of the ownership is the private sector. Now, please tell me you know who that is. Who's the private sector?
To households.
Households and business firms. Of course, the government owns things. They have to. Federal buildings, whatever, county courthouses. But most of the ownership is private citizens. Most of the decision-making, what we'll produce, how we'll produce it, who receives what we produce, most of the decision-making is citizens. Very limited government. It's as far right as we can get on the spectrum and be practical, have a functioning economic system. Under classic and by the way, classic capitalism was Adam Smith's idea. This is what he outlined in his book, Wealth of Nations. This was his idea. Now I'm going to tell you something that you might not have known. If you read the description of Adam Smith in your textbook, which based on the expressions on your face, I doubt most of you have. Excuse my sarcasm or my cynicism, but I've been doing this a long time. Had you read that, you would notice when he lived. And you might have thought, if you're sharp, you might have thought who some of his contemporaries were, people that lived at the same time. So, let me just test my theory. When did he live?
Time.
1300.
Rome.
No, I know you don't know. That's the point. Kinda hard to teach you when you don't know anything. You gotta come to class with some basic knowledge. When did he live? Look it up. You got a textbook in front of you.
1723 to 1790.
Somehow some of you think when you get wrong answers, it's the teacher's fault. That's not how it works. When was it?
1713 to 1790.
He lived in the 1700s. Can you think of anybody else you might have ever learned about in your schooling history that lived during that time?
Washington.
There you go. George Washington, that's when he lived. How about John Hancock,
Patrick Henry.
Patrick Henry, James Madison, father of the Constitution, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, our founding fathers, right? They lived at the same time. All right, and when they were declaring their independence from England and England's stupid system of mercantilism, all right, if we're not going to be part of England, we're going to be our own country. Well, not only are we going to have to set up a government, which we did, right? 3 branches. Right? That's the Constitution. Not only are we going to need a system of government, we're going to need an economic system. So our founding fathers were left with the challenge, what kind of economic system are we going to do? Well, we knew we weren't going to do mercantilism. That's a dumb idea. You stockpile wealth for what reason? Think you're wealthy? Can't eat it. All right? The only good that money has is the things you can buy with it, right? They understood what you understood right away when I told you you're a millionaire but can't spend it. And who cares? Right? So our founding fathers knew that. You know where they got their ideas? There was a bestseller at the time called Wealth of Nations, written by Adam Smith. So when they're, I don't think the conversations went like this, don't get me wrong, but when they're sitting around saying, what kind of economic system are we gonna have? I'm think somebody might have piped up and said, hey, did you guys read that book by that Adam Smith guy? Wealth of Nations? That's some crazy radical ideas. You know, visible hand, profit motive, leave people alone, let them figure out how to use their talents to make other people's lives better. And he seems to think that would create wealth. That's freedom. Wanna try that? Yeah, let's try that. And that's what we built right into the Constitution, basically. We sometimes call the United States an experiment in freedom. It's an experiment in economic freedom. So our founding fathers were like, what would happen? What would happen if we would base our entire country's economic system on this idea of the government staying out of it, just letting people decide what they wanna do, and then if they can figure out a way to meet the needs and wants of others, just let them keep what they earn. Wonder what would happen? Well, the proof's in the pudding, right? Here we are 200 and whatever years later, and we have created more wealth for more people than any other country or economy in the history of the world, and is not even close. Is it because of all our great natural resources? Well, partly, yeah. It's part of it, but mostly it's because of our freedom. It's because our founding fathers decided to use Adam Smith's ideas. So let's look closely at them. Since it worked so well, let's see what it means. Classic capitalism means the government is so limited that it has 3 and only 3 responsibilities. That's it. Government is supposed to do this, a whole list of things. There's 3 things the government's supposed to do. And you'll notice a theme here when we outline these 3 things. We expect the government to do these 3 things for one reason, because we can't do it for ourselves. That's it. What we can do for ourselves, we don't look to the government to do for us. Alright? We only ask the government to do what we can't possibly do for ourselves. So according to Adam Smith, which by the way means according to your founding fathers, which then means according to the Constitution, which is still the law of the land, this is our government's job. One, protect us from foreign aggression. Alright, we do that, our government does that through the national defense, right? Whether it's the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, the CIA gathering intelligence on would-be enemies of the United States, Homeland Security, whatever, right? All kinds of agencies and people in our government who are working night and day, round the clock, around the world, protecting us from outside threats to our freedoms. They've done a pretty good job of it over the years, haven't they? Right? September 11 didn't go too well, but since then we've done a pretty good job of it too. By the way, why again do we need the government to do that for us?
Because we can't.
We can't do that for ourselves. That baseball bat under my bed isn't gonna do any good if some country wants to shoot a nuclear missile at the United States.